Okay, so following on from the tutorial series on introducing email piping, again, if you haven't already followed that, go ahead and do so. As long as you're set up with email piping and you followed the process of doing everything, sending an email and getting the data back, we've got this pass.php file here, which essentially sends back the information that we passed through by email. So as long as we've got that set up and ready, and we've set up email piping, we can go ahead and start to modify this to actually insert posts into a database. Okay, so obviously the first thing we want to go ahead and do is create our database if you haven't already, and then we want to set up our tables. So I've opened PHP and I've created a database here which I'm going to start creating tables on. So let's go ahead and create a table. And let's choose a name for the first table. This is going to be users. So if you already have a users table on your site, you will just need to go ahead and add different information like the unique ID that we're generating. But we'll just be doing that roughly in here to demonstrate. Okay, so we need 3 fields. So I'll add one more column, or column rather. The first one's going to be user ID. The second one is going to be the user name. And the last is going to be the unique ID. So the user ID is going to be an int, the username's a varchar, the UID is also a varchar. I'm going to set these both to 25 in length. The user ID needs to be a primary key and auto increment. That just means that every time we create a record, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will uniquely identify each user. So let's save that out. And let's go ahead and add a user to this database, just manually add a user to this database. So I'm going to go ahead and click insert, and I'm going to type in Alex. And for UID, let's just go ahead and use SHA1 and just generate a hash. So I'm going to just type in banana, click go. It will truncate the data, but that doesn't matter. We've basically now got a long UID. Let's actually go and shorten that out. The point is here that this UID will be randomly generated for each user that registers on your site, and it will be given to them only. No one else will be able to see this. So it doesn't matter how you generate that as long as it's here with your other user data. So this is the string that we're going to be copying and pasting into our email to send this email to. So the next thing to do really is to create the posts table, insert a couple of test posts, and then we'll set up the index page to list these posts out. So we'll do all the boring bits first, then we'll go into actually being able to update this by email. So we need, let me think, 5 fields. No, we'll probably only need 4. So let's add 2 more. And we'll call this table posts. The first is going to be post ID. The second is going to be user ID. So this is going to be the username that corresponds to, the user ID that corresponds to the username. So if it was me posting it, it'd be user ID of 1. Then we're going to have the subject and the message. So let's just go ahead and set up the properties for this field. So post ID and user ID are both going to be integer. Subject is going to be a varchar, I'll keep it at 25, and message I'm going to keep as text because it could get quite long. So for post ID, this is going to be an auto increment, and it's also going to be a primary key. And we can leave user ID as it is. We don't need to do anything to that because we're going to manually insert that data. So hit save. That should create that table for you. We're going to go over to it now, and everything looks cool. Let's go ahead and insert a couple of test posts. So I'm going to insert a user ID of 1. The subject here is going to be love the site and love what you've done with the place. And let's insert another one from me. Forgot to add love the color scheme. So let's go ahead and click go. Browse our table. We've got the subject and the message. Now the point of this is we're going to output the data on the home page here, tagfin.com, and that will just be the index page within the root directory, and it will just basically list all of these posts. So we'll quickly do that now, and then in the next part of the tutorial we'll move on to actually inserting these. So let's head over to our, not our email client, let's head over to our directory. So this is the root directory. Let's go ahead and create a new file called index.php. And let's go ahead and create another new file called connect.php. So connect's going to connect to our database, which is extremely important. So let's go ahead and edit that file. The first thing we want is obviously our opening PHP tag. We are going to connect to a database. We're then going to, we're going to connect to a server. We're then going to select a database. The first function here takes 3 parameters: the server that we're connecting to, the username, which is tagfin_Alex, and then the password as well. In this case, mine is a generated password like this. Then the database. So we already know that the database is called tagfin_db. So we'll go ahead and tagfin_db. And that's it. Go ahead and save that file. We can then include that on any files that we need to connect to our database, which is index.php and parse.php. So index.php, let's head over to our code editor, and we will require connect.php. So we have connected now to our database, and then this file here is just going to basically output the information. So what are we going to do? Well, we need to create a query in order to grab this data. So I'm going to create a variable called query, and we're going to use the MySQL query function, pass a string through, which is a query. I'm going to pull this down just so it's a little bit neater, because we're going to be not joining, but we're going to be grabbing the username based on the user ID, because obviously in posts we're only storing the user ID, we're not storing the user name, so we need to sort of get that data from here in the same query just to be efficient. So we are going to select tab across one, posts dot, so we're selecting something from the posts table, user ID. We're also going to select the subject from the posts table, and we're also going to select the message from the posts table. What we're also going to select is from the users table the user name, and we'll put in a little a where clause in a moment, just to say where the user ID next to the post matches that of the user in the users table, then we can retrieve the username. So where are we selecting this from? Well, we're selecting it from posts and users. And our where clause is going to be where the post user ID is equal to the user's user ID. And that will then match these up so we can then grab this username here. We also want to make sure we importantly group by posts .post ID. The reason we want to group by post ID is because the post ID is unique. Otherwise, we would only retrieve one result in this case with this query. So now that we've created that query, hopefully there's no problems in there, but we'll find that out in a moment. We're going to loop through the results because we're obviously going to have more than one post being output to the page. So again, this is very rough, as I explained in the start of the tutorial. It's not anything special. It's just literally going to be splitting out data. So we want to say while row is equal to MySQL fetch assoc, which is going to fetch an associative array of this data, and then we can output the field names underneath here. So we pass in the query there, and we want that to loop while the query is not false. Okay, so in here what we can do is we can go ahead and just echo out anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to echo row subject, just for now, okay? So I'll go ahead and save that, go back to my home page and refresh, and you'll see here we've got love the site and then forgot to add, and that is in fact our 2 subjects that we have in here. So we know that this is looping through properly, and we know this is pulling data out properly. That's the main thing. Now what we can do is we can focus on actually, let's go back to the right page, we can actually focus on outputting this properly. So I'm going to output paragraphs, and within this is going to be the data. Again, you know, we shouldn't really be using paragraphs for this necessarily, but it's just quick and easy. Okay, so within here, we want to output row username, and then we want to say sed. We want to break after the colon, so we're breaking, and then we're adding on the subject, which will be a encased in double quotes, sorry. So here will be the subject, row subject. And then we want to break again. And then we want to add in the body. Now this might look confusing, but if we just break it up, we've got paragraphs surrounding the entire thing. We're echoing out and we're using the comma to echo several things at once. So we're echoing a starting paragraph tag, the username, a space, said, and then a line break, and then a double quotation mark, breaking again and entering this, outputting the subject within this these two quotation marks, breaking again onto a new line, and then we're outputting the body and then ending the paragraph tag. So this will now look like this. The body has not appeared. That's probably because I have entered body instead of message. So well done to anyone that spotted that. We've got this message field here. So basically these here correspond to, let's find it, this is a nightmare, these here. So now we have the output of the body. Perfect. We have outputted the data that we need. Now we can focus on the more important part, which is actually sending this data by email and allowing this to be posted as a user. So in the next part, we'll crack on with that.